The dawn broke pale over the Wyoming range, washing the grasslands in a tired gold that matched Alexandra Hale's mood. Smoke still clung to the low places, thin as a ghost's breath, drifting from the corral where the brand fire had burned too late into the night. She stood at the fence line, hands roughened by rope and ash, and counted cattle the way a gambler counted losses slowly, twice, with dread tightening the chest. They were short by Alexandra pulled her hat lower against the sun and the sting behind her eyes. 23 head didn't just wander off. Not with the gates barred and the creek low. This was theft, clean and cruel. The kind that followed a widow like a shadow, because thieves believed grief left women soft. They were wrong. She swung into the saddle and rode the perimeter. Boots creaking, mare steady beneath her. The land bore signs, if you knew how to read it. A scuffed patch where a fence had been cut and wired back. A drag mark where a calf had stumbled. Hoofprints angled north toward the Cottonwood Pass. Alexandra followed them until the trail dissolved into rock. She stopped there, jaw set, and turned back with resolve, burning hotter than the brand fire. By mid-morning, she was at the barn. Chalkboard, nailed to a post, ledger open. Rebranding was the only way to save what remained. Her husband's brandage over a running bar had been known for 30 years. Now it was a beacon. Thieves would come again. She had sketched a new mark last night, candle stub flickering as she drew a simple A-split by a star. Clean, hard to alter hers. Morning, Alex. The voice came from the lane like a dropped match. She turned before she meant to, heart tripping over itself. Ethan Cole stood there, dust on his boots, hat tipped back just enough to show the familiar crease between his brows. Older than she remembered, or maybe harder. The years had etched him with the same sharp lines they'd carved into her. "What are you doing here?" The words were cool, but her hands betrayed her, curling tight around the ledger. "Sheriff sent me." He nodded toward the hills. "Cattle theft. Heard it hit you? Funny how news travels." Alexandra closed the ledger. "I didn't ask for help." Ethan's mouth twitched not, quite a smile. "You never did." Silence stretched, filled by the lowing of cattle and the creak of the windmill. The past pressed in, a promise made under cottonwoods, a kiss that tasted like summer rain, a letter never answered. She had married a steadier man. Ethan had left town. "Sheriff thinks the rustlers'll be back," Ethan said. "Rebranding's smart. You'll need hands." "I've got hands." She gestured to the ranch boys, already moving calves into the chute. "You'll need someone who knows brands," he said gently. "Someone who won't cut corners." Her eyes flashed. "Are you offering?" "I am." Alexandra studied him. The last thing she needed was old pain, stirring like coals. The first thing she needed was to protect her ranch. Practicality won. "One day," she said, "you help me rebrand. Then you go." Ethan tipped his hat. "Fair." They worked through the heat, iron glowing, calves bawling. The new mark pressed into hide with a hiss that carried both finality and hope. Ethan moved with surety, voice calm, hand steady. Alexandra watched despite herself, measuring the man against the memory. He was different, so was she. When the last calf was turned loose, the sun slid low, staining the sky with fire. Alexandra wiped her hands and met Ethan's gaze. "This brand," she said, voice quiet, "means survival." He nodded, and a second chance. She didn't answer. But as the wind shifted and the smoke cleared, Alexandra felt something unfamiliar take root alongside resolve and ache that wasn't grief. And a spark she'd thought long dead. The brand fire burned again before sunrise, its glow a steady pulse against the dark. Alexandra liked starting early. Fewer eyes, fewer opinions. Pain traveled quieter at dawn. She stood with her sleeves rolled, hair braided tight, watching the iron heat until it glowed the right kind of red-hot, enough to mark. Not so hot, it scarred too deep. Ethan arrived without announcement, leading his horse like he belonged there. That bothered her more than if he'd come swaggering in. He tied off at the rail, washed his hands at the trough, and took up his place by the chute as if the years between had folded neatly away. They worked in practiced silence. The cattle shifted in load, steam rising from their hides in the cool morning air. Each hiss of the iron felt like punctuation, closing one sentence of her life and starting another. Alexandra focused on the rhythm rope: hold, brand, release. Don't think, just do. Your hands steady, Ethan said at last. So is yours. She didn't look at him. Praise was a dangerous thing. He smiled anyway. She could hear it in his voice. You always were good under pressure. That earned him a glance, sharp as a spur. You didn't stay long enough to know what I became. He paused, iron hovering over the coals. That's fair. The past stirred, despite her efforts. She remembered the night Ethan left train, hammering the roof. His words rushed and raw. Opportunity, work up north, just for a while. She'd believed him. Then the letters stopped. Silence had done the rest. By mid-morning, a rider appeared on the ridge. Alexandra stiffened, hand drifting toward the rifle by the fence. Easy, Ethan murmured. It's one man. The rider came on slow, watching the ranch with the interest of someone counting cattle in his head. He tipped his hat when he reached them. Mornin', he drawled. Name's Brooks. Heard you had trouble? Alexandra's jaw tightened. Funny, I don't recall spreading invitations. Brooks chuckled. Town talks. Ethan stepped subtly closer to Alexandra. Not touching, just present. Sheriff, no, you're out here. Brooks, smile thinned. Just lookin'. Cattle business. Alexandra met his gaze unblinking. This ranch is under watch. Any cattle with my brand is mine. Anyone caught altering it will answer to the law. Brooks' eyes flicked to the fresh marks, then back, rebranding. Already. That's decisive. It is, she said. He tipped his hat again and rode off, dust trailing like a warning. When he was gone, the silence felt heavier. He was measuring you, Ethan said. And the brand, I know. Alexandra exhaled slowly. They'll try again. They will. Ethan leaned on the fence. We can set a night watch. Rotate hands. I can stay. Her instinct was to refuse. Her second instinct, hard-earned and wiser, told her to accept help where it was offered. 2 nights, she said. That's all. He nodded. 2. They finished the day without further interruption. At supper, the ranch boys ate loud and grateful. Alexandra excused herself early, claiming paperwork. Truth was, she needed air. She stepped onto the porch and found Ethan there, looking out over the darkening fields. You should eat, she said. Well, he didn't turn. Alex about before. She braced herself. Don't. He faced her then, eyes earnest. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I was wrong to leave the way I did. Her chest tightened. The words she'd rehearsed for years, scattered like ash. Knowing doesn't change what it cost. I know. His voice was quiet. But I'm here now, for the work. For the ranch. She studied him, the lines of his face softened by lamplight. Trust was a bridge burned once already. Then help me protect what's mine, she said. Nothing more. Ethan tipped his hat, a gesture of respect. Nothing more. But as Alexandra went inside, she knew the echoes had already been stirred into ashes. Once warm, were never truly cold. The first night watch settled over the ranch like a held breath. The moon rode high, pale and watchful, casting long shadows that stretched from fence post to cottonwood. Alexandra wrapped her coat tighter and leaned against the rail, listening to the soft shift of cattle and the distant chorus of crickets. Ethan paced the perimeter with easy confidence, rifles slung low, eyes scanning the dark. He moved like a man who had learned patience the hard way. Alexandra followed his path with her gaze, aware of how comfortingly familiar his presence felt and how dangerous that comfort could be. Tracks by the creek earlier, he said, when he came back around. Old, but they'll test you again. Rustlers always do. They think I'm afraid, she replied. They think you're alone. She met his eyes. I'm not. The words surprised them both. They took turns walking, sitting, listening. Time slowed, measured in small sounds. A horse, snorting, leather creaking, wind brushing, grass, in the quiet. Memories surfaced, uninvited. "Why didn't you write?" Alexandra asked suddenly. Ethan stopped. For a long moment, he stared out at the dark, as if the answer might be written there. "I did twice. Never heard back." Her breath caught. "I never received them." He turned, disbelief flickering across his face. "I waited months. Then I heard you'd married Thomas." Alexandra swallowed. Thomas, gentle, steady Thomas, who had loved her without storm or promise. "I thought you'd chosen a different life." "I tried," Ethan said. "Turns out you don't outrun what matters." Silence returned, thick but less sharp. The truth sat between them, finished, heavy. A sound broke it. Hooves, careful, too careful. Ethan's hand went up. Alexandra reached for her rifle, heart hammering. A shadow moved near the north fence, then another. Low voices whispered. "Stay here," Ethan murmured. "No," she whispered back. "It's my ranch." They split, flanking the movement. The fence creaked softly. A man cursed under his breath. "Drop it," Alexandra called, stepping into moonlight. "Hands where I can see them." Two figures froze. One bolted. The other raised his hands slowly. Ethan emerged from the dark, rifle steady. "Recognize him." "Alexandra, did Brooks' mouth twisted. "Just lookin'. Again," she said. "Funny how that keeps happening." They marched him to the barn and tied him to a post, sending a rider for the sheriff. While they waited, Brooks watched Alexandra with a calculating stare. "You'll lose more than cattle," he said. "Men don't like widows who stand tall." Alexandra leaned in close. "Men don't scare me." The sheriff arrived near dawn, hauling Brooks away with promises of more questions. As the sky lightened, exhaustion settled over the ranch like dew. Ethan sat on the fence, rubbing his eyes. "You did good." "So did you." She hesitated. "Thank you for staying." He smiled, tired and genuine. "Any time." They stood together as the sun rose, painting the land anew. For the first time since Thomas's passing, Alexandra felt something other than survival driving her forward. Hope, cautious and fragile, stretched awake. But hope, she knew, demanded honesty and courage. She wasn't sure she possessed yet. Morning brought more than light, it brought consequences. Word of Brooks' capture spread through town by noon, carried on wagons and whispers. Some said Alexandra was brave. Others said reckless. She didn't care which version stuck, only that her cattle were safe and her resolve unbroken. Ethan stayed true to his word, helping through the second day without overstepping. He fixed a sagging gate, sharpened tools, spoke little unless spoken to. It was that restraint, so unlike the man she remembered, that slowly softened something tight in Alexandra's chest. They worked side by side in the north pasture, repairing fence where the thieves had cut through. The sun climbed high, heat shimmering off the grass. "You didn't have to stay," Alexandra said, handing him wire. "I wanted to," he replied simply. She studied him. "Wanting doesn't always end well." He nodded. "I've learned that." The fence mended. They sat beneath a cottonwood to eat. The quiet felt earned now, no longer strained. A breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the scent of sage and warm earth. "Thomas would have liked you," Ethan said after a while. The words landed softly, unexpectedly kind. Alexandra blinked. "You don't have to say that." "I know," he met her gaze, "but it's true. He took care of you." "Yes," she said. "He did." Grief flickered, no longer sharp, but still present. She had loved Thomas in a way that was steady and real. Loving him hadn't erased what she'd felt for Ethan. It had simply taught her a different shape of devotion. "Why did you really come back?" she asked. Ethan exhaled. "Because I heard about Thomas. And because I never stopped wondering who I might have been if I'd stayed." She considered that. "Now, I see a woman who survived loss and chose to stand. I don't expect a place here." His voice was earnest, unguarded. "But I won't run anymore." That mattered more than any apology. Later that afternoon, A ranch hand rode in with news. More tracks near the eastern ridge. Not fresh, but close enough to keep everyone on edge. Alexandra organized the men with clear authority, setting watches, tightening routines. Ethan followed her lead, without question. That night, they stood together again, under the stars. The ranch felt different, stronger. Claimed, "You've changed," Alexandra said quietly. "So have you." She smiled, just a little. "Maybe that's why this feels possible." Ethan didn't reach for her. He only said, "Whatever you choose, I'll respect it." That, more than anything, loosened the last knot of resentment. Forgiveness, she realized, wasn't forgetting it, was allowing room for truth to breathe. As the moon climbed, Alexandra rested her hands on the fence rail, feeling the solid wood beneath her palms. The ranch, the brand. Her life no longer defined by what was taken, but by what she chose to rebuild. And for the first time, she didn't imagine that future alone. The sun rose golden and hot over Alexandra Hale's ranch, casting light on a land that had already begun to heal. The morning air smelled of hay and dust, and the faint temps of sweat from hard work. Today, the remaining cattle would bear their new mark, a symbol of survival, resilience, and the life Alexandra had fought to protect. Ethan was already at the chute, iron glowing in the early light. He glanced at Alexandra, who stood a few paces back, ledger in hand, noting each calf as it passed. "Ready?" he asked, voice calm but steady. "As I'll ever be," she replied, tightening her braid and squaring her shoulders. The first calf stepped into the chute, a nervous animal with wide eyes. Alexandra handed Ethan the iron, and he pressed it into the hide with practiced precision. A hiss of heat and the scent of singed hair filled the air. The mark left behind was crisp, bold, a split by a star. Alexandra's new brand, the symbol of everything she had endured and everything she intended to protect. They moved through the herd, working together in a rhythm that felt almost natural. No words were necessary. Glances and gestures conveyed all that needed saying. And yet, when a particularly stubborn calf tried to resist, Ethan caught her hand gently, guiding her. Alexandra felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with something that had nothing to do with cattle. By midday, the work was done. Sweat dripped, boots were dust-covered, and the iron had cooled. Alexandra stood back and admired the herd, every animal now bearing the new brand. Every one a testament to her strength and determination. "You did good," Ethan said quietly, standing beside her. "We did good," she corrected, and he smiled at her use of the plural. The day was still young, but the danger had passed. Brooks' capture had discouraged further rustlers, and the brand would keep her property safe. Alexandra felt a wave of relief that was almost so rare in recent months, that she wanted to cry just to prove it was real. Ethan turned to her then, eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart hitch. "Alexandra, I know I don't have the right to ask, but would you consider a second chance?" She blinked, a small, incredulous laugh escaping her. "You mean us?" He nodded. "I was a fool once. I left when I shouldn't have. But I've stayed this time, and I'm not leaving. Not unless you tell me to." Alexandra studied him, saw the earnestness and the sincerity etched into every line of his face. She thought of the ashes of loss, of nights spent standing watch, of the quiet moments under the stars. She thought of the way her chest had ached for something familiar and steady, and how Ethan's presence no longer frightened her, but grounded her. "I think I might be ready," she said, her voice soft but certain. "Ready to see what comes next. Together." He grinned, that crooked smile she remembered, and stepped closer. Together, then, they stood on the ridge, looking out over the land that had tested them, the herd grazing peacefully below. The sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and fire. And Alexandra realized that survival wasn't just about protecting what she owned, it was about embracing what life had given her back. Ethan reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The touch was steady, warm and full of promise. As the sky deepened to twilight, Alexandra whispered, almost to herself, "A second brand, a second chance." And this time, it felt like it could last a lifetime. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.